in advance. According to Israeli officials, Mizrahi had been in contact with Iranian operatives throughout 2025 and carried out a series of security-related missions. The revelations come on the back of a sharp surge in Iranian espionage network in Israel. 3 Israelis were arrested last week on suspicion of spying for Iran. And in January, 2 IDF reservists were arrested for allegedly sharing sensitive information about the Iron Dome missile defense system to Iran. Now, amid uncertainty over the fate of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi has said that Iran will be able to produce enriched uranium in a matter of months. Now, during an interview with CBS News, Grossi also said that despite damage to Iranian nuclear facilities, some is still standing. Now, on the question of whether Iran was able to relocate some of or all of its enriched uranium before the strikes, Grossi admitted that there was no clarity at this point, but he did not rule out the possibility of Iran having moved some of the uranium stockpile. However, U.S. President Donald Trump disagreed with Grossi's statement and assessment. In an interview with Fox News, Trump said he did not think the stockpile had been moved, as the U.S. didn't give much notice to Iran before striking its nuclear facilities. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio condemned calls in Iran for the arrest and prosecution of Grossi. In a post on social media X, Rubio expressed support for IAEA's verification and monitoring efforts in Iran and called on Tehran to provide for the safety and security of IAEA personnel. Earlier, Iran had rejected a request by the IAEA to visit its nuclear facilities bombed by the U.S. and Israel. In a post on X, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi had called the IAEA's request meaningless and malign in intent. Araghchi hit out at IAEA Chief Grossi personally for not speaking out against the Israeli and U.S. strikes, describing it as an astounding betrayal of his duties.
Now, Israel and Iran's 12-day war has ended. But the war of words between the United States and Iran is still ongoing. The American President Donald Trump made a big claim on his Truth Social, saying that he had saved the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei from a very ugly and an ignominious death. Now, Trump further added that the U.S. forces knew exactly where Khamenei was, but did not let Israel or the U.S. forces kill him. Now, the American president further said that he immediately dropped work on sanctions relief for Iran after Khamenei said that his country had scored a victory over the United States. Now, Trump's comments received a sharp rebuke from Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. In a post on X, Abbas Araghchi condemned Trump's statements as disrespectful and unacceptable and said that if Trump genuinely wants a deal, he should set aside his tone towards the Iranian Supreme Leader and should stop talking about assassinating him. Further, Araghchi took a jab at Israel and said that it had no choice but to run to its daddy to avoid being flattened by the Iranian missiles. He further warned that Iran does not take kindly to threats and insults. Now, the American President Donald Trump has warned that he will absolutely consider bombing Iran again if intelligence indicates that Tehran is still able to enrich uranium to nuclear weapons grade.
If the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
In the recent development, the Iranian mission to the United Nations has also accused the US and Israel of state terrorism by threatening to assassinate the Iranian Supreme Leader, the 86-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Now, calling these threats to the Iranian Supreme Leader a flagrant violation of international law, Iran has urged the United Nations to not normalize or to diminish the gravity of these kind of threats. The controversy over targeting the Iranian Supreme Leader comes just days after the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz had claimed that the Israeli army had tried to kill Ayatollah Ali Khamenei but had failed to find a viable opportunity.
President Trump has said that he saved the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei from an ugly death. In a post on Truth Social, Trump claimed that U.S. forces knew exactly where Khamenei was, but did not let Israel or the United States forces kill him. He further added that he had immediately dropped work on sanctions relief for Iran after Khamenei said his country had scored a victory over the United States. Trump's comments received a sharp rebuke from Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. In a post on X, Araghchi condemned Trump's statements as disrespectful and unacceptable and said that if Trump genuinely wants a deal, he should set aside his tone towards the Iranian Supreme Leader. Further, Araghchi took a jibe at Israel and said that it had no choice but to run to daddy to avoid being flattened by Iranian missiles. He further warned that Iran does not take kindly such threats or even insults. The controversy over targeting the Iranian Supreme Leader comes days after Israel's defense minister claimed that the Israeli army intended to kill Khamenei but failed to find a viable opportunity. The Iranian mission to the United Nations, in a letter addressed to the United Nations, had accused the United States and Israel of state terrorism by threatening to assassinate the Iranian Supreme Leader, calling the threats a flagrant violation of international law. The letter urged the United Nations not to normalize or diminish the gravity of such threats. Furthermore, Trump insisted that Iran wants to return to the negotiating table on its nuclear program a week after U.S. strikes on Iran's 3 nuclear facilities, including Fordo. However, Iranian Foreign Minister has denied any agreement for resumption of talks with the United States.
Iran wants to meet. As you know, their sites were obliterated. They're very evil nuclear sites. They were, now has been proven. We had some fake news for a little while.
President Trump has warned that he would absolutely consider bombing Iran again if intelligence indicated that Tehran was still able to enrich uranium to nuclear weapons grade. When asked in a White House press conference whether he would consider fresh airstrikes if last week's strikes were not successful in ending Iran's nuclear ambitions, Trump replied, without a question, absolutely.
If the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
Meanwhile, a week after Trump claimed that U.S. strikes had obliterated Fordo, new satellite images have emerged which show the impact of the U.S. strikes. However, the extent of the damage still remains unclear. Iran also rejected a request by United Nations nuclear watchdog IAEA to visit its nuclear facilities bombed by the U.S. and Israel. In a post on X, Foreign Minister Araghchi called the IAEA's request meaningless and malign in intent. Araghchi hit out at IAEA chief Rafael Grossi personally for not speaking out against the Israeli and U.S. strikes, describing it as an outstanding betrayal of his duties.
And Yemen's Information Minister Muammar al-Irani has accused Iran of attempting to relocate parts of its military industry to territory controlled by the Houthis. In a detailed post on X, al-Irani claimed that Iran was turning Yemen into a workshop for developing an advanced missile base for the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and a platform for launching threats against regional security. Now, according to the Yemeni Information Minister, Tehran is outsourcing some of its military production facilities due to increased international pressure to restrict its nuclear and missile program. Now, according to al-Irani, Iran is moving the manufacturing and development of missiles and drones to Houthi-controlled areas, particularly in Sadr, Hajar and capital Sana'a. While the development comes after Iran's ambassador to the United Nations said that Tehran would be open to a nuclear deal in which it transfers its stockpile of highly enriched uranium abroad. In an interview to El Monitor, Iran's envoy Amir Saeed Iravani has said that Iran is open to the transfer in return for receiving yellow cake. Now, yellow cake is a raw material used in the production of nuclear fuel for nuclear power reactors. Meanwhile, former Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has accused IAEA chief Rafael Grossi of abetting the slaughter of innocent Iranians and abetting more war crimes after he suggested that Iran could be hiding its stock of enriched uranium at World Heritage sites in Isfahan.
have some breaking news coming in just right now. Iranian media has reacted strongly to the U.S. strikes. An Iranian state TV commentator said every American citizen or military in the region is now a legitimate target. A news anchor said on Iranian state television, and I'm quoting here, "Mr. Trump, you started it and we will end it." Now, the broadcast showed a large graphic of American bases in West Asia with the headline, "Within the fire range of Iran." The anchor said the U.S. had no legitimate place in the region. Now, we have just breaking news just coming in. We have some Iranian media reacting to this, and we have our correspondent Susan just joining in. Susan, now, we were just talking about these targets that Iran has time to time said that they will be targeting these if U.S. get involved. What is the latest that you can bring in?
So we were talking about Iran's capabilities, and I failed to mention another very important thing. All of those individuals that make decisions in situations like these have been killed by Israel. Iran's top commanders have all been eliminated by Israel. And then the second important thing is that air defense, where it seems that Israel has complete control of Iranian skies. The third that could really do harm, we know Iran has proxies, but Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has essentially been almost eliminated. I mean, completely not able to defend Iran even during these 9 days. So we're hearing these news coming out of Tehran, but we're also hearing from some regional Iranian officials who are saying that, a war has started, that some of our nuclear facilities have been, to a certain extent, damaged, but they're claiming that Fordo hasn't. So it has had damage, but it's not completely gone. This disconnect between what Iran is saying and what it's capable of doing in terms of retaliation really needs to be examined. And again, once we know what the damage assessment is, then, and I think once Iranians know themselves as well, they're in a sense of shock right now. Once they know, then I think they'll have a better picture of if they have the capability to retaliate and to what extent they can retaliate.
All right, Susan, of course, we'll be getting to that also. And also to discuss more, we are now being joined by Bishop Garrison. He is a former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and current senior fellow at the George Mason University Law School. He's joining us live from Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us. This is breaking news just coming in. U.S. has now been involved in this Israel-Iran war. Your first reactions to these military strikes?
Well, thank you for having me. First and foremost, what comes next? I want to understand and know, and I think the American people deserve to know what conversations the White House and the administration had with Congress, with U.S. Congress before this took place. There was no declaration of war against Iran, so there must have been some type of imminent threat to take this type of action, this level of action against that sovereign nation. So the president needs to say that in his statement tonight and really make out a clear case as to why this may have taken place. The United States has been in the region at war for the past 20 years. I myself am a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. So again, the American people have already had a strong disdain for this type of military action. So it needs to be a clear indication as to why at this moment, at this time, the president and the administration felt it was necessary. There was a clear, imminent threat to the United States and its interests for them to take on this type of action.
Absolutely, and we were discussing with our correspondent Susan that what kind of reactions we can expect from Iran, and there's some some points that she put in that we really don't know at this point of time what kind of reaction we get from Iran, because so far we haven't seen, we don't know what kind of capabilities they have. So far they have just warned, and now we have some Iranian media saying that now every American citizen and military target is a legitimate target. What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, we should not be surprised by that type of statement. For Americans in the region, this is an potentially active war. And Americans and our allies, our partners that are in the region need to understand that they're going to be potentially targeted. Our bases will potentially be targeted. And there should be some major concerns here. Again, we need to understand what comes next. What is the potential follow-on plans for this? And are we clear that we really did